welcome Nate Mallard to the Schiller Hamilton Law Firm Podcast, man.
Thank you, sir.
Very glad you can make it over here today. I know you just had a nice little tour of the space with Trent, kind of showing you how everything works. And I know at some point you're probably going to want to start using the space possibly for your own podcast we had discussed. So that's really right. Cool. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of get into why you're here and what we're going to talk about.
For sure. So I am a Rock Hill native. Grew up in Rock Hill, graduated Northwestern High School in 2005, went down to College of Charleston. I did graduate in 4 years, which is
that's an achievement at College of Charleston.
A solid accomplishment is just graduating itself. So
that's right.
Did that and stayed down there for about 3 years afterwards working. I graduated in 2009, so it was like the middle of the downturn. So I kind of bounced around. I did a couple of stuff. I was just telling Trent I worked in video production. I did freelancing stuff, worked at a couple different freelance productions, a couple different digital media agencies down there for a while. Just wasn't into it hard enough to compete. Like I liked it, but I was like, like the people that want to do this, like are eat, sleep, breathing this stuff.
It's their art and their science.
It is their art and science and all day, every day, and constantly learning about new stuff. So I was still trying to find my passion. I ended up coming back here to work at Bethel Woods Camping Conference Center in New York as their marketing person. I knew I liked the marketing side of it. The like technical production side, I was a little more, I didn't want to be behind a camera all day. I was more of like a business side of it, right? So I felt like I was getting pigeonholed in Charleston into being like the dude you'd call just to come film and put together a 2-minute video blurb, and had no creative direction, right? I was just like a tool in someone else's arsenal. So I was like, I can go to this summer camp and do all this stuff I know how to do, but I'd kind of be in charge of what we were doing. That's a long story, but that brought me back to Rock Hill. I was there for 2 years, and then things there, we had some change in the higher-ups, and I needed to get out of there, and my mom was like, Rock Hill's kind of taken off on the real estate, and this was in 2013 at this time.
Yeah.
So
bounced back a little bit from the downturn.
Right. It was like things were starting to just come back. There was still, my first year in real estate, there was still a solid, I don't want to say specific numbers, but I would imagine about a quarter of new listings in Rock Hill at that time were still foreclosure, distress, short sale homes.
Wow.
It was just all the time.
That's almost zero now, I'd imagine.
It is absolute. I don't think I've seen a true foreclosure in at least 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. In Rock Hill. There's been other ones around. But my team has the listing contract with Fannie Mae. Mm-hmm. And they basically called us in 2019 and were like, hey, we don't have any business for y'all. We're not canceling the listing contract, but like we're putting you on the back burner for right now. It's just too good out here.
They didn't want you to think that they had ghosted you basically by not sending you anyone?
Yeah. And so there was like a few more. I think we did 2 or 3 in 2019. Mm-hmm. Maybe not even that many, and half of them wouldn't even go. We'd get started on it, and then they'd figure it out, and it'd be fine, But anyway, so I got into real estate and worked kind of all over town until I found my home. I started the home team at Allen Tate with 3 other similar-aged agents in town that were all Rock Hill natives, and we've been growing ever since. This is our 5th year. We'll be 4 years at Allen Tate next week.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, and you say Rock Hill natives; those are becoming increasingly rare
right.
as the city continues to grow. You're not just a Rock Hill native though; you're multi-generational. Like your family had the hardware store in Cherry Road, and then at the end of Ebenezer before they changed the intersection when the
right now the road goes straight through where that building was. Yeah.
Wow. So what have you noticed? What has changed and what has shifted? Just let's talk about Rock Hill in general.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the housing market. So growing up here, I'm sure you helped out at the hardware store. What have you seen? Let's start with what has changed, but then also I want to hear what has stayed the same in Rock Hill and what part of its character has remained.
Obviously, besides the visual stuff of seeing roads getting widened, commercial stuff being built, neighborhoods being built. I wish more neighborhoods had been built in Rock Hill because we need it, but the ones that have been built. It's just changed so much to have the kind of everyone talks about downtown, but it's like my entire life, what we're seeing happening in downtown Rock Hill right now has been what we've wanted. Like I remember I have very few memories of when Main Street still had the mall on it, or it was, it had the roof over Main Street and it was like a mall inside of there. And it was terrifying. And we thought that was going to work to, redo downtown. And then watching the Galleria kind of blow up in the Manchester. And it seemed, that's when I was in high school, downtown was very dead. And they were talking about trying to get stuff done down there, but it didn't seem like anything would stick. So to see it actually come back to where we have a thriving downtown, we have a city now that understands the importance of having like walk and live and play kind of all in the same place, and not just kind of being, we're going to be a bedroom community of Charlotte. We need to make sure we have 6-lane artery roads going in everywhere. Yeah. And that every house has a garage and this amount of frontage, and all that stuff. Which took a long time, but what hindsight's 2020 when it comes to planning. So that side, but what stayed the same, I think, is the general demeanor of the people of Rock Hill is like a welcoming people. Cause like you said, there's not a whole lot of native Rock Hill people left. That's not true. There's plenty left, but they are getting smaller in number. Yeah. So, but proportionally, right. Yeah. Right. So we have the folks that come here. People are welcomed in all the time. You look at some of the highest up people, my family included. I'm not even really technically second generation Rock Hill. My dad's dad moved here in 79 when my dad was a freshman in college. So like he's a native Charlotte person, which is even rare breed. But yeah, so they were second generation Charlotte people, but he came down here. He didn't move back here till like 84 when he was 32 years old. So, I'm kind of first generation, but that said, it feels like I have this long tie to it because of the way the people in the city of Rock Hill kind of welcome everyone that came in. My grandfather opened the hardware stores. You would think that Gordon Mallard, my grandfather opened the hardware store, lived here for his entire life, the way hearing people talk about him around the hardware store.
It sounds like an institution that was around for 100 years.
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the story with everyone around here. Gary Williams, everyone else. And it's a community that if someone's here trying to do something honest and help the community, build a business, the community is going to support them. And it's like, that's what I think is not changed about Rock Hill. My mom tells a story about how she always felt welcome because she was from Virginia. She grew up a military brat, and she was like, Rock Hill felt like home when we first moved here, just because it would be like people would stop and help. It's some story about running out of gas or something when she first moved here, and like 5 people stopped to help. But anyway, she said that some person she met,
that's the most Rock Hill story I think I've ever heard.
This like segs into the even more Rock Hill story. Was like she said that someone got off 77 up there, and I don't know, it was before she had moved here, and she met this family that had moved here, and their car like broke down, and they got off at exit 82, and were so overwhelmed with how friendly everyone was here. They were like, you know what, we're going to move to this town because it seems like such a nice place to be. And it is, I feel like everyone here has each other's back, especially with the history of, like Come See Me Festival and the way the Chamber's grown stuff. Not to say there's not an undercurrent of good old boy that runs through Rock Hill at times, but I feel like it's not nearly as heavy as some of the other places that you hear about around here. Yeah,
I think that's definitely true. And, you mentioned the word community twice in that sentence, or maybe 3 times. And it's strange, though, because when you hear people talk in other areas about the community, it seems like a more generic term. Like they're just talking about the neighborhood or the city or the area that they live in. In Rock Hill, that word has like a tangible, almost, it has a meaning that's almost like it's a living entity that people go out of their way to try to take care of. Like you have to do this for the good of the community. Like what do you think is unique to Rock Hill, and what has allowed Rock Hill to be able to sustain that across several generations?
That is a very good question. I think that the folks that have built their businesses in Rock Hill and decided this is where we're going to do it have always felt like they needed to give back to the community, and that has been the driving force. Because, I mean, we can talk about community all day long. If someone's not there to help redevelop some type of decommissioned building on White Street that's going to be probably never make money, but they know that we need to save this as a piece of the community. Having people in that mindset that have the means to do it and see that this is something that's going to be good for everyone here involved, my employees, my customers, everything else, that gives it, like you said, like it's like a tangible thing where you can feel this is something that was someone's vision that they did for the people in Rock Hill.
It's strange that wherever there's a demand, there seems to be a supply of people to step up and meet that demand.
Yeah.
And I think that's really unique to Rock Hill. I mean, I know there's other communities that have, thriving civic mindedness, but in Rock Hill, like I said, we definitely seem to punch above our weight, and there's more of it than other similarly sized towns. How are you at all concerned? Obviously, this is a high growth area. South Carolina is in general. Our property taxes are very low compared to the rest of the country, so we incentivize growth.
Right.
We incentivize, residential growth, I should say. Do you feel, or are you concerned at all about losing that advantage or losing that sense of community as people come into the area? And how do you think we can mitigate that? I promise you we're going to talk about real estate at some point.
I understand. This is like stuff that I think about, on the weekends when I'm thinking about the way the city is going and being on planning commission, right? So it's like there's always going to be this person that lives in my head that's a person that's lived in Rock Hill for 5 years and doesn't know that Winthrop is a college, doesn't know what Come See Me Festival is, has never eaten at Ebenezer Grill, like all of these kind of institutions that, the kind of old Rock Hill knows about, and the people that have moved here and gotten plugged in are a big part of, like yourself, So there's always going to be that guy that got a job in Whitehall and in Steel Creek and found a good deal on a house with lower property taxes, moved in the neighborhood. And it's like, so how do you make it where it's approachable for those people to come out and be a part of it? And I think that the job is going to be of the business owners in the city is how do we make people aware of all the cool stuff that's happening right here? Like you don't need to go.
There's so much.
You don't need to drive to Plaza Midwood every Friday night. You don't have to go to Elizabeth. You don't have to go to Noda. Like we have tons of stuff here. And it's getting, there is kind of like you said, it's like we hit this critical mass of it, right? It's like we opened up the first brewery, a Legal Remedy. No one. I don't even know how
many we have now.
Right? Right.
I've lost track.
Yeah, it's like you open up the first brewery, people get there. There's like, why is there no wine? Where's the Bud Light? It's like you kind of have to overcome this. And now it's to the point where, hey, there's literally people that are, for every one of those guys that has no idea about what's happening in Rock Hill, you have people moving here that are like, oh yeah, Rock Hill is great. We came to the downtown, we ate at Flipside, we went to the brewery, we went to Slow Play, we had Kaibi food truck, and it's like, this place is awesome. Like, I can't believe, there's not more communities here. And then they're like, we need a house. And it's like, well, we're still working on it. Happen. That's the one advantage those other neighborhoods have. They have housing.
Inventory.
Well, not just inventory, but they didn't tear down all the houses around the central. And that's a separate conversation. But, that people want to be here because they figure out what's going on. And it's taken it's literally taken my entire life to figure out how to do it right. Because it was like late 90s, we're getting a Ruby Tuesdays, we're getting a Chili's, and we were hyped. We were hyped up.
Like, yes, at Olive Garden.
Yes, when Olive Garden came, it was like a huge deal. And and that's a national consensus, I feel like, as us millennials have gotten burned out from being raised on corporate stuff. We've gone more the other direction. But even then, it was like, that was a big deal to us in Rock Hill because we were like this little
Rock Hill was on the map.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so now we're on the map for what I think are better reasons, and people want to come here and can feel that tangible, growing, vibrant community and want to be a part of it.
So part of that was, you mentioned, of course, Come See Me, Christmasville, all these we know them as institutions, but they are the result of just Herculean efforts,
right,
and volunteer efforts, and businesses, writing checks. Very little tax dollars go into those things, or there's very little city resources. It's all people volunteering their time and people volunteering their resources, and there's a line to do that. It's not, they don't look for people to come volunteer, right, to be a leader at Come See Me, or to look for people to sponsor different events. There's literally a backlog of people that want to be involved. But you mentioned it in a way, I never really thought of it the way you kind of alluded to. Those things almost exist in a way to capture the heart and mind of all these people coming into the area. So in a way, it's almost like a self-perpetuating cycle. Mm-hmm. But if we didn't have the people several generations ago who had the foresight and vision to create those things, where would Rock Hill be? So in other words, I don't really know what's the chicken and what's the egg. Do those things exist because of our civic mindedness, or are they what actually creates and captures the heart and soul and minds to create the civic mindedness?
I think that it is I think it is chicken and the egg, but I do think as well that there is, and maybe this is just because I got the, I don't even know if it's like an unofficial, but I got some type of book about Vernon Grant for Christmas from someone. Mm-hmm. And I knew who Vernon Grant was. And if you don't know Vernon Grant, he was an illustrator. He made the Snap, Crackle, Pop for Kellogg's, ended up marrying a girl from Rock Hill, moved here later in his life, started the Come See Me Festival, really actually started the Chamber of Commerce in Rock Hill, and then that kind of Come See Me kind of grew out of that. Mm-hmm. Reading about him and reading about when he moved, and he'd kind of been a playboy. He got married later in life. He lived in New York. He was kind of like being an illustrator, and I mean, like, doing Saturday Evening Post covers and, those kind of iconic Springs advertising illustrations. That was like a big hotshot job back then. Like, mm-hmm. It was like a cool artsy job, kind of like even a step above like a Fifth Avenue Don Draper ad man. It was more like the artist, like before Andy Warhol was cool, these illustrator guys were like the cool guys, right? Mm-hmm. And reading about him coming here and seeing where he was like, what a welcome, and even back then, and maybe it's just the history of the families that were here. And I mean, there is something to be said for that. People in Rock Hill know how to throw a welcoming party and invite everyone that comes by. So maybe him coming into that culture with his business mind, his, mentality of how can we help this entire community grow? And not only that, but I want to show all my friends from around the country how cool this place is. Mm-hmm. I think kind of really lit the spark of, that was mid timeline wise. I'm trying to think where that kind of fell in our textile history. Yeah. But, it would have been
probably Bleacher heyday.
Waning. Yeah, right about the end of the heyday, right? So, going into it and saying, come down and look at all this cool stuff that's going on. And I think it just kind of grew out of that. I mean, just the idea that, hey, there is something special in this place. We're detached from Charlotte, and even not that Charlotte was that big, but, it's always felt like I've never felt like Pineville feels in Rock Hill. I was in Pineville on Sunday, and it's like, where does Charlotte stop and where does Pineville start? It just kind of became part of the amoeba. And, thankfully, Fort Mill hasn't gotten there yet, but it feels like it could as you're coming further south. But Rock Hill's always felt like it's had its own identity. Mm-hmm. And I think the people from Rock Hill have wanted to keep that identity. And I think that striving to do that is kind of birthed this, let's make sure the people that come here can be a part of this to continue keeping this place the way that it is. Yeah,
and you're right. That requires being really welcoming, and I can attest to that. I mean, I came here in 2002 to go to Winthrop University. Mm-hmm. And, immediately there were families that I didn't even know. I mean, I was, I had jobs in the community, active on campus, met a lot of people, and there were families that would say, oh, why don't you come over, we'll cook you a meal. So I got to know a lot of people as a 18 or 19-year-old college kid in the community. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I thought, why would anyone want to live anywhere else when, the people here are just so welcoming and care so much about the greater community. When you went away, you said you went to College of Charleston. College of Charleston is famous for its lack of urban renewal. And, you mentioned some of the changes in Rock Hill and tearing down some of the old houses. Charleston's kind of the opposite of that. Did spending those 4 years, and congratulations, by the way, on being able to get out of college at Charleston in 4 years, how did that time away affect your perception of Rock Hill? Did it increase your appreciation for it? Did it change your appreciation for it? Because like you said, you came back. Mm-hmm. What changed or what happened during that time?
So you're exactly right. I mean, I lived in literally a house in downtown Charleston that was probably 120 years old, and half of it was falling down. And again, middle of the downturn, the guy had finished one unit in what was supposed to be 4 units in this old Charleston row house. And it was cool, living in downtown Charleston where we could bike everywhere, we could walk everywhere. And now, even Charleston's changed now, not exactly for the better. I mean, you see the development on King Street and the massive brick buildings where they've knocked down the old stuff and kind of had their own. I think Charleston's going to look back at this time frame from 2009 to now as kind of like what we did in the 70s to the urban renewal.
Like, oh God, what did we do?
What did we do? But anyway, yes. But coming back, so I got to Charleston in 2005, and it was definitely a lot better than what I'd heard from some of the people that had graduated in the late 90s, early 2000s. Just as far as not. Same thing that happened here. Everyone moved out of downtown. Mount Pleasant was blowing up. James Island was blowing up. There were strip malls were taken over instead of the walkable downtown.
Downtown was a little rough.
Downtown was a little rough. Yeah. But it was like, there was cool stuff going on. People were trying. That was like the biggest difference is like, oh, you want to open up a craft beer record knitting store? Like, go for it. Like the rents were cheap enough in downtown Charleston that it was like, give it a shot, like if it sticks, it sticks, and it breeds that kind of creative energy that Rock Hill was sorely missing. And then, so when I got back in 2013, I bought my first house in 2014 down on the corner of South Jones and Black. So I was like right outside of downtown, right?
Yeah.
And the fountain was being built at that time. Amelie's had announced they were moving into downtown Rock Hill. There was a little bar called The Vault that was open up in the bottom of what's Amelie's now. Mm-hmm. Mike Gentry at the Arts Council was doing like kind of DIY music shows in the old courtroom building. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming back, and granted, it was nothing. To say it was like Charleston would be an absolute lie.
Much smaller scale.
Right. But to come back and see the people trying to make it into something cool, knowing that stuff wasn't going to stick, like the Vault didn't stick. I mean, whatever. But just the energy around it and the kind of like, this is the same energy in downtown Rock Hill that we were feeling in 2006 in downtown Charleston. Mm-hmm. Now we've kind of followed the same trajectory because now we have the giant high-rise apartments going up. But it's like, to me as a person from Rock Hill, I'm like, that's fine. That's fine here because that was nothing.
And we need housing. We need people downtown.
We need housing. This was an empty field. Put up apartments, that's fine. Yeah. It's a little different in my mind to Charleston from when it's like, man, that was a guy's house, or that was an old, restaurant, or like Reed Brothers, like the oldest, department store leftovers from, forever ago, and it like closed. And I mean, just like weird eclectic stuff that Rock Hill had been sorely missing for years and years because we had sent it all out to Galleria Boulevard, So, and I know I'm kind of focusing on downtown, but that just seems to be where the main epicenter of it is right now.
That's where the gravity is. And I mean, you mentioned, you said 2000. When did you buy the house? 2013?
14, yeah.
14? Okay, so that was somewhat prescient at that time because...
Oh, it was a foreclosure.
Yeah. There was nothing going on downtown.
Yeah, so it was like 14 was literally they were building the fountain, so that had started. Christmasville had started the year before, maybe? Or is Christmasville 10 years this year? I can't remember. I don't know. Was it 2011?
I think, it would have been a year or two before that.
Yeah.
So maybe it was 2012.
Christmasville was coming into downtown. There was the
reemergence of Christmasville, we should say.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then we have the current Christmasville, current iteration of Christmasville. But the fountain being built to me was kind of like looking back at Doug Eccles is the mayor of Rock Hill, and I know it wasn't just him, but it's just kind of easy to say his whole ideology and the council members that we've had during his time as mayor and everything like that, and his time on council and stuff, seeing this weird niche of kind of ESPN 8 the Ocho sports tourism, turning that into something that can put us on the map to bring in the tax support dollars, the ATAX stuff. I mean, all this kind of stuff that would allow us to do this, to build the community up, is just absolutely genius to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's been going on my whole life
Talk about growth
too.
paying for growth. That's
right,
exactly what it is.
Exactly. So it's like, why do we need a velodrome? You know, it's like, I remember, I'm sure, I mean, you live in Riverwalk and you've been there a long time, but like when the velodrome first opened, it was literally like a hole in the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like,
why? Do we have that many cyclists here? We need a velodrome.
Right. And then that year, the second year, they had like a very large national qualifier there. And there was like a girl that came from Seattle that stayed at my parents' house. And you know, they were like looking for volunteers and my mom was involved. And she was like, yeah, this is huge. She's like, there's only like 6 of these in the country, you know, like, and
one of our first neighbors, when you say we lived in Riverwalk a long time, I think I was house number 13 in Riverwalk. And one of our first neighbors who lived there right before we moved in, moved from Europe, I forget, somewhere in Eastern Europe, because of the velodrome. They packed up and moved across the Atlantic, moved to Rock Hill just so that she could train at the velodrome on a nearly year-round basis.
Yeah, and thank God for those people hanging through that first kind of 5 years, because it was, I still remember like living downtown, and I remember being like, golly, this seems like this feels like the right direction. I was like,
we just
like
keep
compared
it going
to everything else we've tried, and I was like, this really feels like this is going to be it. And I mean, it obviously is. We can't build enough apartments down there. I mean, it's all rented out already. I mean, there's more people moving to the area. There's new businesses starting. Those businesses are thriving. Stuff that people had tried in the past, and maybe a different iteration. You look at like, you know, the Hickory Post, for example. There's been at least 5 or 6 different people try to set up consignment stores downtown at some point in its history, and it's like, cool. It's something we're finally sticking to it here now. You know, it's like, so, like you said, growth paying for growth, and the foresight of those kind of leaders at the top at the city that kind of saw, hey, this is what we need to do. But I get back to the fountain and say, that to me was like, okay, this is the type of investment the city needs to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a new, you know, warehouse, and yet that has its place in the world, and the city's done it, and, you know, it works out. But it's like, this is something that the entire community can rally around, can come and see, will bring people to downtown, if anything, just to drive by. And it's like, you know, sitting in traffic on Main Street in 2014, I remember being like, where are all these people going? There used to be no one on Main Street after 6 o'clock. You know, it was just, it was a ghost town. And now it's like, now it's when it picks up as people start going places down there. So, yeah.
It is cool to see. So in your day-to-day job, are you hearing or getting more interest for people that want to live downtown? How many people call you and say, hey, Nate, I want to look for a house that's somewhere close to town?
There's still, I'm not going to say there's, and it's a frustrating stigma to live downtown in my mind. So it's like, there's still like these pockets that kind of old Rock Hill people, or people that, and not knocking people that went to Winthrop, but, you know, kids that went to Winthrop that have stayed here now and they're in their late 20s, early 30s looking for a house. They still think about kind of like the Saluda corridor, that kind of like southeastern side of town is like a bad part of town. And, you know, as an agent, I can tell them, hey, I lived on South Jones and Black in 2013, 2014, and I was fine. I had great neighbors on, you know, like I never had any problems. And, you know, but that said, if there was a way to build legitimate condos, something like that, and not just, you know, because everything that's being built downtown right now is a rental, you know, in a high-end rental, you know. And so, you know, that's not really my wheelhouse, but I know, like, if someone were to say, hey, we're taking, for example, I had some folks call me last week about the old white office furniture building at the corner of Hampton and Black. And they were like, what if we bought that and kind of, because it's like 15,000 square feet.
It's massive upstairs,
it's massive. Yeah. So it's like 7,000 square feet upstairs. They're like, could we turn that into like 4 condos? And I was like, I think the city finally now is willing to play ball with that a little bit more. I think there was like a headbutt of, after the urban renewal stuff and building of the unnecessary cloverleaf, which is like, if I ever become mayor, I will put up a plaque that renames that interchange South Carolina's most unnecessary interchange.
You can still lay down in the middle of that thing at noon.
It's 3 cars an hour. But that was the idea then. It was like, okay, our downtown is slowly dying. We're building this, so let's build a direct pass off the interstate where it's easy to get in and out of. We're going to put a roof on downtown so we can use it 12 months a year, when it's like, bro, it's only cold here for 2 months.
And it's easy to make fun of that stuff, but it's like, at least they did something. In the face of like you said, downtown was decaying and dying. It's like, what do you do? Like they did something.
And the roof, I mean, truly, from a preservation standpoint, I mean, they say that really helped actually preserve, damage and, environmental, but also just human damage of being, we want to tear this down or redo this. If there wouldn't have been anything there and they couldn't have done it, that allowed the downtown to keep its character of what was left of downtown. I mean, you think the downtown Rock Hill is about 3 times as big as it was before they came through and raised the entire black business district and everything like that. So it's like, I would love to see what would have happened, but then I think about, like you said, we had leaders that were trying to do something, and that is very important. They could have done nothing. Very important, because you look at other places, like you look at how, like, architecturally, and this is going to sound insane, but you look at how beautiful, like, Gastonia is, who didn't have that type of leadership, who was just kind of like, let's let it go. They didn't get a whole lot of urban renewal money. They didn't have people fighting to do that type of stuff there, and it's still lagging behind us, not that it's not growing crazy too, but like you said, that is a good point. But I don't know where I'm at now about the urban renewal, but that's where, like you said, you summed it up great. We've always had people that were trying to look out for what they thought was going to be better for the town.
Yeah. Let's talk about real estate a little bit.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time on Zillow. It's like a hobby, like every night, get the girls to bed, let's see what's on Zillow. Realtor.com, I mean, you name it. And it looks like, for outside observer, prices continue to go up, very little inventory. Talk a little bit about both the supply and the demand side of the coin locally, and specifically in the Rock Hill market.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing boots on the ground every day.
Yeah. So we obviously have a ton of demand, and that is what has caused our prices to just, I mean, absolutely go insane. I know we mentioned in the hall out there before, but it seems like, and this is something I have extrapolated, so don't publish this anywhere. But
don't worry, no one will ever see this.
No one will ever see this. Don't worry. So in 2017, I went to New Orleans to a big KW conference, right? And Gary Keller got up there, and that was right when things were really getting hot. Like 16 is when stuff really, and even 15, summer of 15, things were starting to really take off again. He put up this big chart, and it was like, essentially building up to 2008, and then we had like this fall off, and then we had the build up that we were on now, and there was like this 15 to 20% equity gap between those two lines. And we'd stayed on that line until 2020. And it's been like in 18 months, we just went parabolic to pick up that 15%. Now we're seeing prices are leveling out. We're not seeing month over month return of, doesn't matter. We're seeing buyers that are, whether or not they're fatigued mentally or, just so tired that they're saying, I'm not going to give you a no appraisal contract with $30,000 over asking price and cash on it, all that stuff. That's kind of gone away, which is really good for the market, because it's not good to have a ton of people coming in and everything. So what we saw was, I called it the greatest time for people that had bought a house in 2015, 2016, where you could move up into like a very respectable second home, long-term raise your family home and have the exact same mortgage payment as you did on your, what you had paid $180,000 for 4 years before. So people were making these equity jumps, and it was fine for everyone. And the good news is that all the mortgages that were written at that time are not, we're not built on a house of cards like we were in 2008.
Right.
Yeah. So that supply, it kind of opened people up to say, man, I can sell my house and make $65,000, go buy something bigger, better, nicer, newer, and my mortgage payment is only going to go up $65 a month because interest rates are so low. So, that kind of created that demand. But there's also general demand just of people moving to this area. Charlotte is a huge, fast-growing, you probably know the real number, but I've heard like 4th or 5th fastest-growing metropolitan in the country.
Yeah.
So, that. And then the supply is specifically in Rock Hill, and this isn't really true over the whole Charlotte area, but specifically in Rock Hill. This goes back to the city leaders and the city planning. We haven't really built any new houses.
We're not overbuilt.
Right. We are not overbuilt. And as much as everyone gets on Facebook and complains about traffic and why are they building this and think about how long it's going to take to get to the interstate when they finish this and yada, 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 it could be so much worse. I mean, if the fact that we can ride around and even see in the city limits, I mean, you see swaths of land for sale still, 20 acres, 40 acres, if that was in West Charlotte or,
it'd be townhomes and multifamily.
Huntersville. Yeah. I mean, you go up there and it's like, you saw the people complaining about the Renaissance Festival and the traffic that it caused. I don't know if you saw that on the news, but
I was stuck in it.
Yeah, I know we went and we got stuck in it too. And we tried to cut through the new neighborhood that was on the backside of it. And I remember we were driving up there and I was like, either there's no rules or it's just incredibly lenient to get a master plan done here, because the city of Rock Hill, this would not fly.
Yeah. I mean, you work with planning. So.
Right. So it's like, that has caused Rock Hill in particular to be incredibly drastic. I wrote this down actually. So the average price in 5 years for a home in Rock Hill, $238,000. This year, as in December of 2021, which is the last time this is from Redfin, $342,000 average price of a home.
5 years.
That's the gap, yeah. So the average, it's not average, it's median. But median home value in December of 2021 sold in, this is in York County, not Rock Hill, York County in general, $342,000.
Okay.
But you got to think about how wide that is too. Yes, that includes Lake Wiley, but it also includes Smyrna. That's a very wide range of home sales. So for that to be a median price point is insane. I mean, I think Rock Hill skewed under that just because obviously Fort Mill and the Lake are going to take a little higher price point in there. When I got in 2013, we used to say what the average in the MLS for a home in Rock Hill was $172,000. And now it's much closer to that $255,000.
How does that track nationally?
Right about the same.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're basically on par with national average?
Yeah, and I wish I should have brought more stuff, but yeah, the Charlotte Metro tracked about 8% higher than national.
So I'm interested to hear what you think about the differences between the price increases that we saw leading up to 2008 and what we see now, because it seems like before there was a lot of speculation built into the market. You had, due to the banks were playing fast and loose. You mentioned the ease in which one could obtain a mortgage previously. There was a hope and a prayer and just a belief that prices would continue to go up. And that was the house of cards, was that sustained increase in prices. So everyone just kept buying. So it seems to me that a lot of the market previously was speculative. This market seems to be built more on just general demand. Individual families, individuals just needing a home. I guess, can you confirm that? What do you see? What are the big differences?
Well, I think the biggest difference is we have a delayed generational checkpoint of buying a home with the millennials. Okay. And so, I don't know. I guess I'm pretty much dead center.
Pent up demand.
We have pent up demand from first of all, from millennials that said really bucked the idea of moving to the suburbs anyway and wanted to be in the cities and wanted to, do all that stuff. And we're like, no, I'm going to go live in New York. I'll rent. I don't ever want to own a home, yada, yada, yada. We've always been delayed, right? We were delayed in open bank accounts when we were 18, 19. Then we were delayed in driver's license. And then we were delayed in having children. And you know what I'm saying? So it was always moving further down the line. So as we had this pandemic hit with rents happen and people saying, you know what, maybe I can live in the suburbs if I can work from home. I don't need to be in uptown Charlotte. I don't need to keep renting for $14.50 a month or whatever it was. That, along with the fact that a lot of these people hadn't had a solid job for 10 years. I mean, we essentially created this gig economy,
Mm-hmm.
And so we had, I think about the first 5 years I was out of school, had 15 different jobs, just anything from maintenance. And, that was kind of more of the rule than the exception of like, you got out of school, you got a great job. In 3 years, you got a good promotion. And, by the time you're 27, you're closing on your first house,
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the housing market did crash so hard is that no one, could get the loans as we were kind of refiguring out the stuff that was going on. So I think that's a really big part of it, is the fact that the millennials have entered the chat and said, hey, we're seriously buying homes now. And that's who it is. That's what it is. And I know that us as older millennials now don't realize that there's 40-year-old millennials now, It's
so hard to believe.
It feels like we're still talking about 22-year-olds as millennials, But that's what I think a lot of it is. And I'm not an expert on the 08 stuff. I was not selling real estate. I was not in it. Like I said, I got it in 2013. But that said, fast and loose is an easy way to put it with what the banks seem to be doing. The fact that a banker could call an appraiser and say, hey, we just went under contract on this one. You're going to make it work out for us, right? So like now it's like
there was no firewall there.
There was zero firewall. And now there's an absolute, barracks between each other. I mean, you can't even the lender sends it off into a clearinghouse. The clearinghouse then anonymously posts it, and then the appraiser just accepts it based solely on location, delivery date, and the price that they're charging, that they're willing to pay for it. So they don't even know which bank it's coming from. They don't even know until they complete it, and the clearinghouse tells them, send it to this bank, which was a huge part of the problem, because the appraisal stuff, they were like, whatever, everyone thought this is never going to get bad. The banks keep lending money. What does it matter? So
everyone just assumed prices would keep going up.
Right. And so it does feel like that. And I watched Pat Riley, the CEO of Allen Tate, did a great video about this the other day. He was like, he's like, the last 18 months have kind of felt like that run up to 08 because of this. But everyone that got a loan, even in the pandemic, especially in the pandemic, has been, you're calling the employer 4 hours before closing. Does this person still have their job? And if they don't, they're not closing. There's none of this no income.
Do you have a pulse? You get a loan.
There was none of this do you have just a pay stub that can be from your mom, or whatever, and I'm generalizing because I didn't buy a house in 08 and I wasn't selling houses in 08, but that's what it seems like was going on. The fact that you could get all these, these adjustable rate mortgages have really gone away. We'll see them come back as interest rates go up though.
Yeah.
But that said, you're still going to have to be qualified to get them.
I'm really glad you just mentioned that. So interest rates, we just saw, Jerome Powell just confirmed what everyone thought.
Right.
Interest rates are going to have to increase. It's just a matter of how much and over what time period. Inflation doesn't seem to be going away. What does that mean for prices? What does that mean for demand? And the flip side of that, how insulated or exposed to those macroeconomic pressures is the local Rock Hill market?
This is a serious question. Well, the first answer I always say is I wish I could see into the future and at the end of March and see what the Fed decides to do with interest rates and see where everything is going to go. That said, the interest rates have to come up above zero, or this is going to happen, and this is why it's happened, right? I mean, if you can't make any money with your money, I mean, if you're, a savings account's paying 0.7%, maybe 1.2% interest, where it used to be, even when I was a kid, you could go 3%, something at the base interest rate. So when that happens and people have all this cash that they're like, why would I ever put this in a safe vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
I can flip it into real estate, which we've seen a lot of. And I don't know if this is, we hear about it, but we think about like BlackRock and kind of like these massive funds that were like, let's just take all the cash and put it in real estate and have rentals, buying up entire new neighborhoods. I mean, literally going to D.R. Horton and being like, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll have it.
We'll take the whole
You don't understand. I want all of the homes.
I want all of them, yeah. And we're just going to turn it into a rental community.
Yeah.
Which makes the case for interest rates need to go up, because we just can't have them zero. And then even the talk last year about them going to sub-zero interest rates, it's like, so, or we get this massive, bubble's not the right word, but this inflationary trend in the way that the cash is going to work, right?
Yeah.
So in Rock Hill in particular, I don't foresee there being problems with your personal residential home.
Mm-hmm.
If you're planning on buying a house and staying there for at least 2 years, I don't foresee you losing any type of major chunk of anything going on. And I mean, that's just my own prediction, only because of watching what the market has done since the massive upswing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, when there's a really peach of a property and you get emotions involved in it, and it's like, man, this house is just absolutely gorgeous. It's in a great neighborhood. The schools are fantastic. And you got 10 other people that are also well qualified. Because like we said, that demand is still out there. It's just buyers are starting to act a little more rational with their decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You get emotion involved in the real estate side of it, people can act crazy.
Yeah.
And so then you still get some of that. But where that was the rule last year, I mean, I do about 60% listings, 40% buyer in my residential real estate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I maybe accepted 2 offers on my listings last year that were contingent on inspections and seller-made repairs. I mean, that's how crazy it was. I mean, people were giving up.
Basically no contingencies.
No contingencies,
Yeah.
meaning like the seller, even if the HVAC was totally busted, said, we're going to take it because we can't get anything else. We'll pay for it, when we get done.
Yeah.
Like, we'll refinance in 6 months and have enough equity to do all this.
I'm just curious, how many of those buyers are new to the area? So that would be their first Rock Hill or York County home.
I don't know.
Does it seem like a significant amount?
I would say that there was, I wouldn't say there was a lot of like, in this, I mean, this is going to be like super anecdotal because it's just me. I'm just one agent.
Yeah.
But, a lot of folks that I was selling to were moving to the area, but they were not the younger crowd. Mm-hmm. They were relocating for better taxes, better job, especially with the work from home stuff. They were like, oh, we can. Quality of life stuff. They're like, we can come down here.
Good schools.
30 minutes away. My office moved a branch to Charlotte, but we're working remote. I can be here, go in once a week. I mean, I had a lot of those coming from big areas, Cincinnati, Richmond, kind of big.
California even.
Yeah, California. A lot of people from California come
to
the area. But yeah, I would say, loop back to the end of your question. In Rock Hill, I don't think that there is – I think we're going to see prices level out this year. I think we're going to see our contracts get back to normal, where buyers are going to say, yeah, I need an inspection, and if there's anything – major wrong with this house, we might ask you to help us out fixing it, right? Which has been the standard for years. I don't think we're going to see major discounts on price unless there's sellers with either agents or themselves that think, oh, it's been 2 months, let's raise the price 10%. That's not going on. We're seeing days on market creep up on stuff that we know is overpriced. And so that said, we talk about days on market. That's a whole nother topic, but a long days on market last year was like 2, maybe 3, and now we're seeing stuff kind of creep into like 2 weeks. which is still historically an incredibly short amount of time for a house to be on the market.
I mean, that's astonishingly low. And what that says to me is, and I'm sure you being in the market, your job being what it is, you're acutely aware of what the narrative is surrounding the future of the real estate market. Mm-hmm. And, that narrative is, well, you can just do everything online. Why do you need someone to help you? Yeah. But when a house isn't staying on market for more than a day or two, you have to know what's coming. You almost have to buy before it goes on the market, or be prepared to buy before a house comes on the market. You have to know, where a house can be found, or know something about the neighborhood. In a way, to me, what that does is basically dispel the narrative. When you have demand that's greater than the supply, you really need that person. So my question is, how much of your job now is helping someone on the buyer side find a house and locate a house and do the intelligence of having, the boots on the ground and knowing where the next house that's going to pop up for sale is, and having the contacts and being able to get your person in there first to be able to see it?
Yeah, that is a huge part of it. And I think that, like you said, there's a big push to go all online, like with Quicken Loans and Redfin, and the partnership of use our agent and, we'll get you hooked up with a great agent and your loan, and it's all streamlined, which is again, plays into this theory of millennials have entered the market, right? Because we're the DoorDash generation, the no face to face, right? And it's but like you said, in this market where you really need to have someone that understands the neighborhood, where stuff is coming, has enough business to know, and whether it's, I don't mean individually, it's not that agent you're working with has all these listings that are coming up, right? But knows agents that do, is working every day to be there to make sure that they're checking MLS, and beyond that is having good relationships with other agents, having good relationships within your brokerage to make sure that you're on top of that and you're asking the questions and you're looking for it. And the hardest, I tell people all the time, is my job of everything else is a manager of your expectations during buying a house. Fill out the paperwork and, send emails to attorneys and stuff. But my main job is that what this process is going to be, because that's the only reason you've hired me, is to help. You could go do this yourself. It's really not that hard. From a technical standpoint, right? It's a 7-page contract with blanks in it already. Two like-minded people could come together and buy it, and the seller would sell it to them and send it to an attorney and be done with it. But it's also an emotional piece to it, and that's what our job is to make sure we're there to manage what they think should happen in the process and how the process is going to go. And that is what makes agents good, because if they're there paying attention to what their people need, knowing exactly what they want, it's going to, and I've had this conversation a ton of times in the past year. Something will pop up. They'll be like, what about this one? And it's no, I know that's not right for you. We absolutely can go look at it. But first of all, this is going to sell in a day for more than I know that you want to spend. And it's not even what you really want, and then we get there and look. And then after you build the rapport with them and they know that you're actively looking, you're bringing them stuff that is a real contender for what they want, then they understand, oh, this is why I have they're truly acting as an agent and not just a person with lockbox access and the ability to fill out the contract, Yeah. That's kind of what separates it.
Do you feel like that's a competitive advantage for the home team in general? That you have 3 other people that are from here, know the area, know the city, know the people, have the networks, have those reputations and relationships. What does that mean for the home team in the greater market?
So for us, and now we have 3 additional agents as well on us. So we're 7 agents, and we are the biggest team that's not an individual brokerage anymore in Rock Hill, number wise, unit wise, everything else. So just within our team, you have a good pulse on when something's coming, the communication with that, the understandings, the people knowing, and that's not to say there's not agents that we deal with on the regular that are really pushing that to their competitive edge. They tease something on Facebook, and then I've got people calling me about it, and I don't have any information because they haven't put it in MLS. And if I call them, they're not going to answer because I know they just want people. You know what I'm saying? There's like a line between how to do it to a service of your client and how to be kind of borderline sleazy with it. I mean, I think it's tough. I feel like real estate agents get bad raps from people that have had a really bad experience with their realtor before. And it's easy to do because, I mean, especially now with the way that so many brokerages have turned into essentially a sales training company, and it just doesn't matter that it's real estate. It's just about sales training, right? It's just that real estate has basically zero overhead and you get a fairly large commission check at the end of it most of the time. So it's like this huge revenue potential. And, you look at Keller Williams, and Keller Williams is a great company. I used to work for them, but it's like their whole mantra is we're teaching you how to be sales and systems driven. And it works great in real estate, but if you're not building the relationships locally with not just other real estate agents, but people and everything, and you have the rapport where, I know like agents will call me that aren't affiliated with Allen Tate, aren't on the home team, and they'll say, hey, I've got, I know you were the buyer representative on this one. I've got this listing coming up. Do you have an investor that, you want to bring? Because I know you're going to do a great job, and it's not going to be a pain in my butt if I put this out here and Susie Q, brand new real estate license, brings a buyer and has no idea how to handle a transaction like this, So there is some serious value to having that network of people and the ability to have I guess it's a respect thing, but I'm sure it's similar in your thing too, when you have an attorney on the other side that is going to know how to handle the case, right? So it's like the same type of situation. Yeah, we're all out there trying to get our clients and find more clients and grow the business that way. But the flip side of it is we have to all play fair and nice with each other, or it defeats the entire purpose of doing this.
Yeah, one person can really sour people on the industry as a whole.
Yep.
So you want your competitors, hard to even call them competitors.
Right.
You want other people, colleagues within your industry, to uphold the standards of the profession.
Right.
Just to uphold the standards of the profession and make sure that the profession doesn't want for a favorable opinion. I want to finish with this. Why continue to be long in Rock Hill real estate? What's the pitch for Rock Hill real estate for the next 10, 20 years?
The pitch, besides the classic pitch of home ownership is a savings account that is not going to do you wrong. And specifically right now, even with interest rates going up, some of the cheapest money the average person will ever have their chance to get their hands on, is that this place is only going to continue to get better. Everything that's going on here is moving in the right direction. The city is literally doing extremely deep dive thinking and critical thinking about the way that we want Rock Hill to be. They want the city's input. The business owners here want to grow in Rock Hill. People are Rock Hill focused. And when you have a community that's focused on how do we build where we are and not how do I do this and get out of here or whatever. This is not a transient spot for the people that have roots here. They've done exactly that. They've put down roots. They're here to stay. They want to watch everything flourish.
I said we were going to wrap on that, but I have one more question.
Okay.
What's next for the home team?
So we are looking at, we need an assistant. And if you know anyone that would like to get involved in real estate, wants to get their license, 18, 19 years old, wants to come learn the business and, open up a door at a certain time, that's really what we're looking for right now. We're also looking for good agents that want to take their network and merge it with our network. And that's really all we've had to offer. I mean, the other agents that we've brought in under us has been, hey, look, we're not paying Zillow $10,000 a month for leads. All of our dollars that the company is spending is going into youth sports teams, charity events, Men's Haven fundraisers, museum, county museum stuff. We're trying to grow this off of a community has been the theme of this podcast, but that is the whole entire point of the home team was how can we pull our resources and our networks and just make it be exponential. And we had Jen Turner is a fantastic agent that Lee and I, interestingly enough, so she had a listing that I brought a buyer to, and that seller was buying one of Lee's listings. So we were both dealing with her at the same time on related transactions, which doesn't happen very often. And Jen was just, an absolute professional knockout. And Lee and I, we had just hired Abigail about a year before, and she was kind of like a younger one, had been in it for about a year, kind of part-time, and also a fabulous agent. But we were like, why don't we try to approach her who has a little more time? She's not from Rock Hill. She's from Florida. She just had a absolute phenomenal year last year. And it's based on the fact that, she is plugged in immediately into this community. And so the next thing is get a couple more agents, grow at a slow pace, because we don't want to be a call center. We want everyone to be like, when you're calling us, you're getting me, you're talking to your agent. We're at the events we sponsor. That's like a big thing. We're not just going to throw our name on a golf tournament.
Sound like you work for Schiller Hamilton, man.
Right. We stole your business model, Joel. Yeah. Come on. Saw you do it. And I was like, that's what we'll do. Yeah. So, but it works, and it especially works here because of everything else we've talked about is how much people reward people that put stuff into the community.
That's 100% right. Nate, appreciate it, man. Glad you could come by today. It was fun. We'll look forward to doing it again.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.